As the clock crept towards the 11th hour at the newly re-monikered Supernova 2024, North America's largest Smash event of the year came to an astounding conclusion. Spargo, a longtime contender for the best player in the world, was finally able to achieve the highest placement on the podium, winning his first ever tournament in the Supernova series and overcoming his inconsistencies that plagued him throughout the previous season. But despite the catharsis of this long-awaited achievement and the dramatic nature in which he took home the gold, pulling out Roy, a character he had never used before at a ranked offline event, much of the community discussion around Supernova both before and after the pivotal grand finals focused not on Spargo but on his opponent, Sonix. Largely because while Spargo carved his way through the winner's bracket, never being brought to a Game 5 until his final set of the tournament, Sonix spent his championship Sunday mounting what might be one of the greatest losers runs in the history of Smash Bros. Ultimate. Defeating 7 straight opponents in the losers bracket, all of whom rank among the top players in the world, it wasn't shocking to see voices from across the scene ready to laud this run as the best in the game as it was unfolding. Though in the end, Sonix wasn't able to cap off his losers run with a first place finish, and that does create a bit of an asterisk in terms of ranking this the best losers run in Ultimate, it still stands as such a momentous achievement in Ultimate that it bears the continued discussion. Just how good was Sonix's Supernova losers run, and where does it stack up in the pantheon of great runs that have come before it? When esports fans and spectators think of the most exciting, dynamic, and impactful moments in the competitive lives of their favorite games, it's no surprise that what often comes to mind are losers runs. By design, a double elimination bracket always leaves the door open for players who lose even as early as the first round to come back through losers and win the entire tournament. But actually pulling it off is another matter entirely, and a huge underlying factor has to do with the math behind brackets. The recent premier tournament, Riptide 2024, capped out at 1,024 entrants for Ultimate, which is 2 to the power of 10. Thus, it took 10 rounds of play to narrow things down to a single player left in the winner's bracket. Add in 1 set for grand finals, and the event's victor, oh hey, it's Spargo again, was able to win the tournament playing a total of 11 sets. But to advance in the losers bracket, you have to beat not just the other players who lost in the same round as you, but the players who lose in every winner's round that follows. Thus, if Spargo had hypothetically lost his round 1 at Riptide, he'd have needed to win 18 straight sets in losers bracket to make it back to grand finals, and winning the whole event would mean playing 21 sets in total, just shy of double the count he actually played. Many players, especially those who will lose early enough in bracket to be faced with long losers runs, simply aren't capable of that level of consistent play when every set could be their last. But conversely, when someone is actually able to pull it off and put together a feature-length losers run, it is always an electrifying sight to behold, which is part of the reason a losers run bears such a mystique in community discussions. Pulling off strong losers runs is bar none one of the most impressive achievements a player can accomplish in this game. But what makes a losers run strong, and how can we determine how Sonix's recent showing at Supernova measures up against his contemporaries? Well, here's a bit of a disclaimer. As with all types of performance evaluations, ratings will differ based on what aspects of something a given person values, so ultimately this is all subjective. That being said, there were 3 factors to any given losers run that I think we can use to judge how good Sonix's losers run really was, and spoiler alert, it was definitely really good. But you know what else is really good? This video, hopefully, and hopefully you're enjoying it so far, and if you are, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel to help support us in making more content like this that will also hopefully be really good. That's it. Okay, let's go back to the video. Thanks for dealing with that. Naturally, the first aspect to consider when evaluating a loser's run is the length of the run itself. How many sets did the competitor in question play? After all, a loser's run is fundamentally an endurance test, so players who last through more sets than others appropriately come away looking more impressive. And Smash Ultimate's near 5 years of history has given us plenty of these marathon-length runs. Tweak showing at 2022's Poor Priority 7 was one such occasion. After defeating PNW Belmont main Liam to make Winterside Top 64, Tweak wound up facing down Kronos, an up-and-coming Snake player from Colorado. Snake has long been a problematic matchup for Tweak, and though he was able to push things to a decisive Game 5, Kronos would eventually come out on top, sending Tweak down into the losers bracket in an upset factor 6 victory. Now, up until that point, Tweak had somewhat of a reputation in losers bracket. Across 3 years of competition in Ultimate, Tweak had never won more than 5 sets in a row after losing, oftentimes being eliminated after just a few. A 5-set run here would mean finishing at 7th. Not the result he wanted, but seemingly the farthest he'd be able to go. But to the shock of onlookers, Tweak finally locked in to put together a gnarly losers run. defeating New England multi-main Leviathan, PNW Pikachu H4, and besting Kronos in a Game 5 rematch to reach top 8, then continuing on to beat Justice, Anathema, Ken, Shuton, and Kurama twice, ultimately winning the whole event. All told, Tweak won 11 straight sets in losers, crushing his old personal best and silencing those who took his previous records as a rule rather than a suggestion. And by the way, 11 sets is a staggering number. Remember, that was the total sets Spargo played to win a 1,000 entrant P tier, all condensed into a single losers run. Only a few players in the history of the game have gone on runs that long, including Zachary at 2019's Umabura SP7 and Mars at 2GG's Heart of Battle. However, a month later, there'd come a performance that would outdo even these legendary players. During December 2022's Seibugeki 12, a major event held in the outskirts of Tokyo, fast-rising Game & Watch main Miya hit a little snag in his bracket. His round 3 opponent, Joker main Tsubaki, had him dead to rights. As the 66 seed, Tsubaki defeated Miya for an upset factor of 10, and suddenly the tournament's second seed was in losers before getting out of pools. For a player new to offline competition, it wouldn't be surprising to tilt and fall out of bracket within the next couple sets. But instead, Miya set out to prove that he was cut from a different cloth. Facing down a possible elimination at 65th, Miya buckled in for an astonishing 13-set run, defeating well-respected Japanese depth like Manzoku, Jagaimo, and Yamananaction, seasoned character specialists like Rippo and Futari no Kami no wa, I can't pronounce that, I'm not even gonna try, and even top-tier talent like Kameme and Umeki, finally defeating the latter in grand finals to take first place. To this day, Miya's 13-set run stands as the longest ever losers run by any player to win a major tournament, a titanic accomplishment that's held for almost 2 years and seems likely to last much longer. But for all that a lengthy losers run is impressive, it doesn't tell the full story. For one, in order to even be in the position to rack up 10 or more sets in losers, one has to drop into that bracket pretty early, at least before winners top 32. This tends to mean taking a pretty substandard loss. Though Kronos and Tsubaki are pretty well regarded now, neither of those losses look particularly good for Tweak or Miya back in 2022. Furthermore, the events at which their runs took place, Poor Priority 7 and Seibugeki 12, were fairly modest as far as majors go. Still impressively stacked events, but neither of them cracked the top 20 biggest tournaments of their year, according to 2022's Orion rank. And as such, though Tweak and Miya both made impressively long runs, the opponents they were defeating along the way were players they were pretty heavily favored to beat. Miya finished 2022 debuting in the top 20 worldwide, but his Seibugeki run included just 3 opponents in the global top 100, of which just 1 was top 50. On the other hand, Tweak that year was a top 10 caliber player, while just 4 of his losers run victories came over top 50 level opponents, of whom only 2 were in the top 20. Compare that to, say, Diddy Kong main Ryuo's recent run at Japanese major Kowloon 12. Ryuo lost to Zachary at this event in winner's side top 64, and then made a 5-set losers run to a top 8 finish, unfortunately facing Zachary for a second time at the event and falling at 7th place. In comparison to the 13-set monster that was Miya's Seibugeki, 5 sets doesn't seem all that impressive. But consider Ryuo's opponents. Ken, Raru, Toriguri, Snow, and Akaikitsu were all ranked in the most recent global top 50, with 2 of them being top 20 level players. That's 1 more top 50 win than Tweak and 4 more than Miya, making Ryuo's run, from a certain perspective, the better showing. This is the second aspect by which losers runs can be evaluated, the strength of wins a player is able to score. After all, sometimes quality does best quantity. Thank you to my good friends at Into the AM for sponsoring today's video. Into the AM is a team of artists and creators that's been outfitting your passion since 2012. They've been releasing a ton of new collections over this past year, from graphic tees and tanks to Hawaiians to pants and shorts, and they have a sale going on pretty much every month of the year. I'm literally wearing at least one item from Into the AM every single day, and I've enjoyed working with them so much that I've even bought some items for myself outside of the stuff that they usually send to me. If you're interested in upping your fashion a bit or just want to try out some new clothes in the holiday season, I would highly recommend this company. You can use my promo code WALT at checkout or go to intotheam.com/Walt to get an additional 10% off at checkout, which is on top of any sale they may be running. Using that link also affords me a small commission and also kind of informs Into the AM that I'm doing a good job, so it would help me out a ton. This is going to be my last collaboration with them for the year, by the way, but I'm really looking forward to working more with Into the AM in 2025, and I know they'll be releasing even more amazing clothing. I also just want to quickly say thank you to you guys for supporting the channels this year, as well as all of these integrations from Into the AM and otherwise. I know ad spots are often met with an eye roll, and I get why, but these do give me a bit more financial freedom to make videos more frequently, so just know I appreciate you guys a ton. Okay, I think that's all. Check out Into the AM if you're interested, and let's get back into today's video. Let's take a look at some examples though. Perhaps one of the most iconic losers runs of the past 2 years of a high quality came at 2023's Kagaribi 9 at the hands of Japanese mainstay competitor Zachary. After losing to Rimu in winner's side top 128, Zachary would put together an impressive 10-set losers run to 3rd place. And astonishingly, of these 10 opponents, 6 were strong enough to reach the global top 50 by mid-year ranking, with an additional 7th rank just beyond in the top 60. Nearly 3/4 of the opponents Zachary faced in losers were heavy hitters on a worldwide scale. Of course, the most impressive aspect of this run was that Zachary was beating all of these guys with Pit, a character who'd never before been considered solo viable, and whose only major top 8 appearance since have come at Zachary's hands. Not to be outdone though, Japan's most prestigious tournament series would feature another bombshell losers run at its very next iteration. Kagaribi 10 the following May was the biggest event of the year to that point, featuring not just the vast majority of the top Japanese competitive scene, but a large contingent of international players vying for a gold finish. Among them was Spargo, a legendary player who needs no introduction, and a top seed at this event. His bracket took a turn for the worst in winner's top 64 when the fast-rising Samus main Yaura unexpectedly defeated him 3-0, but as you likely already know, Spargo would go on to win his next 11 sets, cleaving a path through losers to take the entire tournament. Now, this losers run was unbelievable, and not just because of its length. Across the 10 opponents he wound up facing, not only were 8 ranked in the global top 100 a couple months later, but 7 of those were ranked in the top 25, and 3, Yoshidora, Mia, and Akola, made it all the way to the top 10. Spargo's Kagaribi 10 losers run was an utterly dominant display and has gone down as one of the most lauded accomplishments in the Titan from Tijuana's storied career. But for all that the strength of these wins seems to evaluate these runs, facing off against great players isn't really something a competitor has agency over. Circling back to Seibugeki 12, top Japanese talent like Akola, Pasirimen, and Abadango were all in attendance here and all could have feasibly wound up in Mia's loser's path. Mia couldn't control when they won or lost, all he could do was try and beat the player in front of him, whoever that was. Things just so happened to work out to give him an emptier losers bracket than Spargo's Kagaribi 10 or Ryuo's Kowloon 12. How fair is it to hold that against his run? We certainly can't make judgments based on who Mia might have beaten, but it still bears consideration when trying to evaluate how these runs stack up against one another. And speaking of abstract judgments, let's move on to the last factor by which we can appraise these losers runs, which is also the most nebulous: importance. And you might be wondering, how do we even evaluate that? Did the losers run lead to a standout accomplishment? Did it change the way people looked at a given player? What was its legacy? Now, for some people, this is going to be a non-starter. How important a given run is seems totally subjective, determined only by the arbitrary weight the community assigns to a particular event or performance. And yeah, a 9-set losers run over the likes of Meister, Abadango, Zachary, Gluttony, Tweak, and more will look great no matter where it occurs. But you can't tell me it doesn't make it all the more impressive when the event in question is EVO 2019 and the competitor is MKLeo pulling off the defining win of his career, one which cements his legacy in the scene and produces the most viewed full tournament VOD of any Smash game ever. The thing is, competitors are human at the end of the day, and humans don't always perform perfectly. The stakes of a prestigious event, the pressure to perform, the lights of the stage, and the roar of an onlooking audience all can make an otherwise disciplined player fall apart at the seams. So just as a lengthy losers run is a feat of endurance, so too is an important losers run a feat of mental resilience. And I think these comparative discussions would be missing something if that went unacknowledged. Let's study one more case: Akola's losers run at Smash Ultimate Summit 6. Unlike most of the runs we've talked about here, this run is on the shorter side, clocking in at just 7 sets. These wins are all top 50 quality, including victories against the likes of Tweak, Gluttony, Proto-Banham, and MKLeo. But what really cements this run as one of the greats is the context surrounding it. Not only was the pressure on to win this event, after all, it was the final iteration in the Summit series, by far the most prestigious invitational in Smash Bros., but with longtime global #1 MKLeo on a downward trajectory, the event was positioned as a key determining factor on who would be able to claim the empty throne. By the time Akola had dropped into losers, his biggest rival for #1, Spargo, was already out of the event at 13th due to some rough losses earlier in the tournament. Akola knew that if he wanted to pull ahead and become the first #1 player in Ult's history to not be called MKLeo, he needed to make a statement run. And under all that pressure, he pulled through, winning the event and ultimately securing the global #1 spot for the last 3 seasons in a row. Your mileage may vary on how much this matters though. Spargo's Kagaribi 10 was longer and probably had stronger wins than Akola's Summit 6. Would it be fair to call Akola's run better because it secured him #1, where Spargo's run only helped him close the gap to #2? Maybe, maybe not. But it's certainly a factor that bears at least some consideration. So with that, we finally have our criteria for evaluating losers' runs: length, strength, and importance. Now at last, let's go back to the run that kickstarted this whole discussion in the first place, Sonix at Supernova 2024. How does this run stack up to the incredible runs we've already discussed? Let's take a deeper look. So, starting with length, Sonix's run clocked in at a total of 7 sets won. Though a lengthy run in its own right, this is a fair bit shorter than the majority of the losers' runs we've discussed so far. However, keep in mind that since Sonix lost in Winners Top 32, the most sets he could have won before there was no one left to play was only 9. Given that he pushed things nearly as far as they could go, even going to Game 5 in the pivotal 8th set of the run, I think it's fair to call this a great run in terms of length. But the strength of the run is truly where it shines. Sonix's Supernova Losers run consisted of wins on the following players: Ashimo, Raru, Light, Shattuck, Tweak, Mia, and Akola. Just 2 days prior, the official 2024 mid-year ranking had these players ranked as follows: 15, 11, 10, 7, 5, 2, and 1. Furthermore, in the time since this run, both Raru and Ashimo have seen some of the best tournament performances of their careers, putting them in strong contention for top 10 finishes at the end of the year. It would be no exaggeration to say that Sonix pulled off this run over 7 different top 10 caliber players from across the world. By far the most impressive swath of wins we have seen in one of these runs so far. The quality of this run in terms of players beaten is simply superb. Finally, that leaves us with importance, and this is a tricky one. Supernova 2024 will be the biggest event of the season, so performing so well at such a huge tournament is bound to be impactful on Sonix's ranking and greater career. But since he didn't win the event, on some level it seems to inevitably fall short of something like Leo's EVO 2019. A high bar for anyone to clear, sure, but one that must be considered when discussing the greatest losers runs in Ultimate's history. That really leaves us with the question of whether Sonix's Supernova is a difference-making run like Akola's Summit 6, and we're not going to know the answer to that for a while. So far in the second half of 2024, Spargo has seemingly pulled away as the frontrunner for global #1, winning back-to-back P-tiers in Supernova and Riptide without dropping a set. But remember, this all depends on potential failures and outcomes we haven't seen yet, contexts that are yet to be fully determined. For now, I think it's most fair to call the importance of Sonix's Supernova run good to great. So where does that leave us? Well, based on win quality alone, I think Sonix's run easily outpaces the likes of Tweak's Poor Priority 7 and Mia's Seibugeki 12. Heavy hitters like Leo's EVO 2019 and Spargo's Kagaribi 10 are giving it more of a run for its money, potentially landing lower or higher depending on which aspects you value most, but we're not done just yet. If you've been around in the Smash community long enough and listened to or participated in enough of these kinds of discussions, you've probably been waiting for us to bring up a certain tournament. Following his second place finish at 2020's Genesis 7, MKLeo would seemingly get off to another rough start at Frostbite 2020, one of the only other super majors North America would hold that year. In a shocking upset, MKLeo would be bested by Mario main Kurama, then fittingly known as Prodigy in Winner's Side Top 64. This was, to this point, the earliest Leo had ever dropped to losers at an Ultimate Major, and with such a stacked roster of players in attendance, victory seemed like a long shot for even the best player in the world. But in this era, on that weekend, at this event, MKLeo made it clear for the world to see. No matter how long, he did not miss those shots. With an 11-set losers run over many of the period's greatest players, Zachary, T, Tweak, Dabuz, Meister, and more, MKLeo won Frostbite 2020 through the losers side, completing what has gone on to be most commonly considered the greatest Ultimate Losers run of all time. Leo's run is longer than Sonix's by 4 sets, and as previously discussed, the maximum potential length of a run that starts in top 64 rather than top 32 is mathematically guaranteed to be longer, but simply as a feat of endurance, Leo's is more impressive. Like Sonix's Supernova, Leo's Frostbite contained wins on a multitude of top players, 9 of the previous season's top 50, of whom 6 were ranked in the global top 10. I think given the time period, you could reasonably call this a stronger set of wins than the candidates from Supernova as well, and finally, though Leo's Frostbite 2020 didn't come at the biggest event of the season, it did have an impact. On the heels of a huge loss at his previous event, Frostbite 2020 was a reaffirmation that all the strengths and qualities that had made him the #1 player of 2019 were still in place, working as intended. And knowing what we know now, that we were about to go into a period with no offline North American majors for more than a year, it was probably pretty crucial to Leo's legacy, however important that may be, that he left things on a high point. Keeping in mind that the final months of 2024 could drastically alter the narrative around Sonic's Supernova run, I think it's fair to say that Leo's Frostbite 2020 is probably of greater importance. So, to sum it all up, Losers Runs are some of the most captivating and exhilarating showings that fighting games have to offer, and Smash is full of some truly stellar examples. Sonix gave it his all at Supernova 2024 and turned in what's doubtlessly one of the best Losers Runs in the history of the game, buoyed mainly by a truly baffling number of consecutive wins over pinnacle-level Smash competitors. But at the end of the day, like so many of his other events in this year, Sonix finished second, and performed what I would very arguably call the second greatest Smash Ultimate Losers run we've ever seen. Thanks for watching. Hey, please like the video and subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed the content, and we have a lot more coming soon. See you next time.